All right. Can you let me know which homework question you want me to go over? Charlotte?
I don't really care which one you go over. I just don't understand how you graph it. Like how the translation, like how it all goes.
Okay. I'm gonna ask which question, then I'll go over that question. Which question?
Well,
4. Okay, 4 is a little bit harder. Louis, you're gonna take a test right now, or you're gonna take a test at lunch? One way or another. Don't tell me you're sick because I know the game you're playing. You're gonna say you're sick, and you're not gonna come in. Okay. Let me see. I'll give it to you. Okay, we're gonna start with calculator part. I'm not giving you non-calculator. Oh, this one? No, this one's non-calculator part. You're gonna do it here, so I can see. All right, so we're gonna look at this function. Now, this question, there is slight mistake. There should be an x here. There should have been an x here, but it's not x here. But without x, it doesn't kind of make sense because it's gonna need a. So you need a pi and you need an x here. So I'm gonna check first three. Any question on first three? I'm gonna go over the last one. Last one is yes.
just number three.
Number three. Okay, we're gonna take this number three, and we're gonna copy this, and we're gonna go to here. Okay, so you might want to check how to graph. Yeah, you might be paying attention because that's the things I want you to be able to do is follow all the things that I'm telling you. So yes, simple thing is you can tell the amplitude. So that's gonna be square root 3. That's equal to 3. That's amplitude. Very easily. But I forgot to do something. What do I forgot to do? Isolate the b. Yeah, so I suppose factor this out, right? So that'd be 3 cosine of 4 over third x plus. Now, if I take out 4 over third, that means I take the pi over 4 divided by 4 over third. So it'd be pi over 4 times 3 over 4. Does that make sense? So that's 3 pi over 16. So it'd be 3 pi over 16. And the minus 1. So what is my period? Period is going to be 2 pi over divided by 4 over 3. So 2 pi times 3 over 4. So that's equal to what? 3 pi over 2. Thank you. So quarter period is going to be 3 pi over 8. Because divided by 4. So it's going to be 3 pi over 8. Any questions here? Midline, what is in my midline? -1. Y is equal to -1. I will always graph the -1 on decimal. I'll graph the -1. Now the next thing is here. I'm gonna say shift. Shift is right or left? Left, how many units? 3 pi over 16, right? Now I want to make sure that the quarter period is same as this. So that's gonna be 6 pi over 16. So that means each time I add, I'm gonna add exactly 6 pi over 16. So I'm gonna go to here. Yeah, this is how you decide the scale. Scale is not decided by whatever you want to pick. Here you have to decide the scale. Here I'm gonna use the same increment. This is 3 pi over 16. So this one's 3 pi over 16. And each time I'm have quarter period, it's gonna add 6 pi over 16. So I'm gonna move 6 spaces because it's 3 over 16 here. 6 spaces is right here, and another 6 spaces right here. And I might need a different template. Sorry, let me change the template. Wait, how do I change the scale? I forgot how to change the scale. There's a way to change the scale, somebody. Oh no, man, forget it. I'm just gonna try to do as much as I can. Limit, I here is gonna go down to -1, so I'm gonna say this is -1 here. This is the midline. Okay, so this is 3 pi over 16 because I moved 6 pi over 16, and this is 9 pi over 16, and this should be a whole period right here. I probably need one more space. So this is gonna be -9 pi over 16. So I here is cosine. Cosine start at a peak or midline or trout. It's in the peak, but it start right this point, right? This is the point that I'm start with, but I'm start at a peak from there, so it'd be 3 units on the top. Does that make sense? And it's coming down like this, and it's coming down like this. So this is graph like this, and this is graph like this. And that should be a whole period right there. I don't know if this is right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go into Desmos to check. Desmos to check of what happened. And if I go into there, what do? I need to graph the midline on Desmos. Yes.
So you got the quarter period to 3 pi over 16.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I got quarter period 6 pi over 16. Because it was 3 pi over 8, I converted to 6 pi over 16 because I want to same as with my original places. In terms of 6 pi over 16, yes. So I moved 6 increment, I moved 6 pi over 16. Now, I don't know if this is right, so I might make some mistakes. So let me double check and I'll come back to answer the question. Yes.
The first point. Can you just go over that part again?
Sure. So the first point is going to be at 3 pi over 16 because they say move left. Do you understand that? Now it's going to go left 3 pi over 16. Now, since this is a cosine, start at a peak. If it start at a peak, then that's going to be 3 units above that. If it's a negative cosine, it's going to start at trout because cosine only start at a peak or trout. Okay? Now, while this, I'm going to talk about how to graph the next lesson. The next lesson is very easy to graph secant. Secant is inverse of a cosine. So if I want to change to this to secant, if I say, hey, let's cross this out. Oh, let me just finish checking this graph. Give me a second. Let me finish checking this graph. So somebody told me what the thing's supposed to be. So I want you to tell me this function. If you have this function, you tell me this function because I don't know if it's right. So can you tell me what's the function? 3 cosine what? Cosine, did you factor out a 4 over 3? So 4 over 3, you guys just should do it right now. You should check it right now. Get your phone out. You have a phone. I'm the only class that doesn't require you to have put your phone away because I need you to have your phone. And then x minus what? Or x plus? No, x plus 3 pi over 16.
You didn't go from this to this by adding 6 pi.
Okay, so and then minus 1, right? And the graph y equal to negative 1. Check out this part. At this peak, at negative 3 pi over 16, I got 2. At 3 pi over 16, I got negative 1. And at 9 pi over 16, I got negative 4. So let's check if it's right. 9 pi over 16, I got negative 4. Yep. All those 3 points are matching up. Even the graph's kind of off a little bit, just because our scale is a little bit different. If you change your scale to, let's just say, you can actually do this. You can change your scale to, let's say, it's 3 pi over 16. So 3 pi over 16. It should be working. I don't know. No, it doesn't. No, that's just a label. That's 3 pi over 16. Let's try that. It doesn't work, but anyway, all those point is exactly the point I advertise. Yes,
Your analogies start at like negative 3 pi over 16.
because it's a very good question. So you know it start at 3 pi over 16 because it's shifting right? Now it's not a cosine graph. It's not a sine graph. Sine graph will start right here. Does that make sense? Sine graph is going to start at a midline. Cosine graph is going to start right here. Is this okay?
But how do you know to start at negative 3 over 16 pi?
It's because this one is positive 3 pi over 16. So it's going left 3 pi over 16.
Okay.
And then start at a midline. Usually sine is start at midline. The problem is this is not sine. This is a cosine. Did that answer your question? So it's going to be 3 units up. Now, if this is negative 3 cosine, it's going to start where?
At positive 3 pi over 16.
No. If this is a negative 3 here, it doesn't.
Because of the minimum.
You start at minimum, so it'd be 3 unit down here. And it's going to go this way, this way. It's going to invert it. Is this okay? Jesus, you just have to write it down. Do you have the scale write it down this time? Yep? Yes.
Just like the last question, so the increments of the quarter periods are 6 over 16.
Yes, because 3 pi over 8 is not same as the same denominator as what you start with.
Match it with
You should match with the starting points, yes. Because that way you know exactly same increment is increasing. Is this okay? Now we're going to talk about how to graph secant graph on this function. How do I graph secant function? If I just cross it out, this is no longer cosine. This is a secant. The thing is about secant, you have to graph cosine because they're directly related to each other. Okay? Now, every time when they hit a midline, it's going to create asymptote. So there's an asymptote here. And there's an asymptote on the next one here, but we're not going to see it. But the graph's going to be like this. It's inverted like this. It's inverted. So this will be the secant graph. It's just inverted cosine graph. So today you're practicing same thing. So if I ask you graph secant, you're going to graph the cosine first and the inverted graph. And whenever the secant graph crosses the midline, not cross the x-axis, it's going to create asymptote. This is going to graph here. I'm going to show you what happened here, right? So if you go back, if I change this to 3 and the secant of parenthesis 4 over 3 parenthesis x plus 3 pi over 16. And if I have a 2 close parenthesis here, and if I just do minus 1, guess what? It's gonna have that inverted wave. So every time you see this here, this is gonna create a asymptote. X equal to 5 pi over 16. So you see that this is gonna create that asymptote. So every time you hit that point, actually it's not 5 pi over 16, it's 3 pi over 16. So 3 pi over 16, it's gonna create an asymptote. And there's asymptotes scattered throughout the whole spectrum. So anytime the secant hits the midline, creates asymptotes. And then you draw the asymptotes first, and then you go ahead and graph it everything else. Does that make sense? So I want you to try one, but meanwhile, let me finish the last one. Last one is this graph. It's not a cosine graph. Yes, this one's a little bit different. This one's harder because it has, this one's a little bit harder. So we're going to talk about secant of this graph as well. And Yen, you should write stuff down. You cannot just look at me, perform magic. No, you actually have to have a brain connected to the fingers, connected to papers, understanding things, because I'm not going to spend time yell at you. I'm going to make sure I don't think I can handle you anymore, because you cannot do things I ask you to do. I have to spend more effort on you than anybody else, to ask you to stay awake, to ask you to write things down, to ask you to do homework. I cannot babysit like this. So I'm going to factor this out. So equal to -2 cosine of 5 over 3 pi. So this case is different. This case is pi. X plus, what if you factor out pi over 2 divided by 5 pi over 3? Pi over 2 times 3 over 5 pi. This will cancel out, and this will get 3 over 10. Does that make sense? Is this okay? Now, A equals to absolute value of -2, that's equal to 2. Period is going to be 2 pi over 5 pi over 3. So 2 pi times 3 over 2 pi, or 5 pi. Pi cancel. So that's going to be what? 6 over 10, right? 6 over 5, I can multiply. Thank you. 6 over 5. Now, quarter period is going to be what? 6 over, no, 5 is 20, so it'd be 3 over 10. Midline is equal to 1. And then what happened next? What's next? Starting. So it's gonna be left 3 over 10. So if you realize this one has no pi. This one has no pi, because if you're gonna go in, I'm gonna graph here. This one we should be able to graph whole thing. So it's gonna be 3 over 10. So this part is gonna be 3 over 10. Luckily they are the same. And this one is gonna be 6 over 10. And because this is 3 space, this is 9 over 10. And this one is gonna be -9 over 10. I'm still missing 1 spaces, but that's okay. Unless I can change the scale smaller.
Like for the quarter periods here, the 3 over 10.
Oh yeah. So I have enough points, huh? So that's gonna be negative 6 over 10. Wait, I can't count. So this is 3 over 10. And this is 6 over 10. And this is 9 over 10. And I should have enough. Okay, so far I'm okay. I'm gonna use this one as 2, and this one's 1. This is a 1. This is a 2. This is a 3. Negative. Why? Because I just want to see a little bit more. So I have midline at -1, so I always graph it midline first. Oh, I can't. Thank you. Can think. 1. Okay, so now it's gonna be 3 over 10, so it's left 3 over 10. So this is not a starting point here. This is a starting point for sine. Emily, what is my starting point?
-3.
Not -3 is gonna be
Is it
-1. Does that make sense? Because 2 units below the thing. And then it's gonna go here, and 2 units above, and 2 unit back, and 2 units below. Now the only thing difference between this graph and the other graph is the scale is a little bit better. So I'm gonna go graphing here. This is the secant graph. And also major difference is each scale doesn't have a pi anymore because I actually cancel them. So this is actually the actual integers, actual fractions, something like this. Now I'm gonna graph the secant of this. So in order to graph, you must graph secant. So today's homework, you gotta graph secant and cosecant. Secant is exactly invert of this. I want you to try to draw a secant graph on top of this. I will cross out this. I say, hey, let's change to secant. What would a graph look like? If I just change it to secant, what would a graph look like? So it's gonna create asymptotes first. I join the asymptote first, and I see this. And I can erase the red graph if I want, but that's gonna be a secant graph. So today your goal is to graph secant and cosecant. While we are teaching this, we actually teach you how to graph secant and cosecant. So tomorrow we're gonna go to tangent and cotangent. So how about this? I'm gonna ask you to graph a cosecant right now. But in order to graph cosecant, you must graph what? You have to graph sine. Once you graph sine with the correct scale, it should be fine. But last thing you should do is you check both graph on decimals. Hopefully somebody checked my graph. If you check my graph, hopefully they are right. I'm gonna check just in case. So I'm gonna get what is the amplitude? It's -2, right?
Yeah.
What is the things I factor out? 5 pi over 3. Okay. And what is the shift? 3/10. And is -1 or +1? +1. Okay, so this should be the graph, and you should change this to +1. And this is the graph that should negative 0.6 is 3 over 10, negative 3 over 10. At 1, negative 3 over 10. Wait, did I do something wrong? Wait. This is the cosine, right? Why is negative 3 over 10 is at 1? Hold on a second. Negative 3 over 10 is at negative 1? No, it's at 1. Something's off here. Shift left 3 over 10. Left 3 over 10. This is a cosine graph or sine graph? Did I? Huh? No, you need to have a slider. Y equal to 1. So this one is at negative 3 over 10. Oh, this one is not negative. This one's negative 6 over 10. So negative 3 over 10 is right here. So it's at a minimum. Yeah, that's right. Negative 3 over 10 to negative 1. Negative 3 over 10 is at negative 1. Yeah, that's right. And that here is going to be 6 over 10 is at 1. Yep, that's correct. I have 2-point check. So that's how I double check. So I'm going to ask you to graph for the last 10 minutes. I'm going to ask you to graph y equal to negative 2 cosecant of 4 over 3x plus pi over 2 and a minus 1. So I'm going to ask you to graph this. But in order to graph cosecant, you must graph sine. You must have a correct scale. You must have everything. Yeah?
Interesting.
Yeah. So now we graph cosecant and secant. Tomorrow we're just going to have tangent and cotangent. And we're going to start doing analyzing the graph. That means if I give you a graph, can I give you backwards? So today I'm going to give you a graph, let you practice it. So I'm going to give you a graph and ask you to start figure out backwards. I'm not going to teach you how to do it. I want you to try different things to figure out how the graph's going to go backwards. You finish that part as a calculus section.
I'm getting a copy.
Huh?
Jordan Blades.
Okay, go to the next period and then come back. You can come back tomorrow to finish the next part. It's only take 10 minutes. Bye.
Can you add me to the alphabet thing? To remind it like I've been requested for like over a week.
Okay, I cannot add them, but I'm okay.
Okay, thank you.
And also, March 2nd, I don't know if you can go, but it's gonna be Seminole High School.
March 2nd.
But next time we should do a lot better. Bye. Luke, did you win over everything?
There's 3 questions I didn't do
Why not?
because I got home at like 10:30. And my parents take my phone at 11. But I fixed it out. You need to figure it out.
The score's not good. How long is the water polo season? All the way to the end of the year, right?
If I have -2 over x squared, like, oh, sorry, -2 over u squared, am I still able to do logarithmic?
I have no idea what you're talking about. Omar, you want to know what you get on the test? Do you know what you got in this?
I have no idea.
Did you went over it yesterday?
I did, but because I was the last day of funeral, I have like 2 questions that I didn't do. I have almost all of them.
Or last day of your funeral?
Yeah. So in the Arab funerals, they're like 3 days long. We do it right after,
Oh.
like, yeah, right after the burial. I'm kind of nervous.
It's bad.
Okay.
But again, everybody is bad. Just ask Luke.
Oh. Damn.
Mm. Mm.
Huh?
Hmm. Yeah, above 60 is good. But yeah.
1 minute remaining until class.